With the success of her first novel, Bastard Out of Carolina, Dorothy Allison has added her distinctive voice to the list of great Southern storytellers. Already in its 7th printing, the book received extraordinary praise from the New York Times when it was published earlier this year. It is a finalist in tomorrow night's National Book Awards. In it, Allison chronicles the childhood of a sexually and physically abused girl named Bone who dreams of being a gospel singer. Joining us now is Dorothy Allison. Welcome.
Thank you.
I should say, it's good to have you here. I should say this takes place in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes.
In a sense, and do you still consider that home in any way?
No, I consider the whole South home.
Yeah.
Kind of amorphous. The Greenville that I grew up in doesn't exist much really anymore.
Because it's become what, industrialized or modernized?
When I was 13, and
Yeah.
it's changed completely. I'm 43 now. That's 30 years. Everything is different.
Yeah.
And most of the people I knew are gone.
Tell me about the writing of this, because it has gotten such enormous praise, especially people always cite the New York Times. I mean, you must have, what was your reaction when you read that New York Times review?
Somebody read it to me over the telephone, and I was like, what? Stop, read that again.
Yeah, because this was 10 years in the making.
Pretty much. The first chapter was begun 10 years before I finished it.
Yeah.
Took a long time.
That's autobiographical.
The first chapter is, definitely, yes.
Take me through that chapter then a little bit.
It tells how I was born.
Yeah, in a car accident.
Yes, my mother was knocked unconscious when she was thrown through the windshield of a car.
Right.
And I was born while she was unconscious. She was unconscious for 3 days, and my aunts and my grandmother were all in the hospital and got into an argument and didn't manage to cover the story, so I was registered a bastard by the state of South Carolina.
Mm. Bone's voice is your voice.
Kind of.
Yeah. Where is it your voice and where is it not your voice?
She's a child.
Yeah.
And the book ends when she's about 13 years old. I'm old and mean, and Bone is still young.
Mean in what way?
Life has been, I always say you have to get a little mean to survive. I got a little mean to survive.
Yeah. But mean meant doing what?
Mean meant talking back, leaving home, not being who I was supposed to be. Mean meant figuring out that the rest of the world was hard, and if I didn't get some hard places, they were going to grind me down.
Yeah. Are you surprised that you've survived?
Yes, but I think not for the reasons most people imagine. I'm surprised that I didn't manage to destroy myself.
Out of what? Out of the walls you ran into, or out of the poverty you came from?
Out of the hatefulness, out of the self-hatefulness that's engendered by poverty. And that's a big way to say they teach you to despise yourself.
Poverty teaches you to despise yourself?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, I don't know if I'm not so sure that it's exactly the same for Yankees, but in the South, particularly in the Baptist.
I grew up in the South.
You did?
Yes.
Somebody said North Carolina.
Yes.
Well, honey, you know.
Yes, I do.
In the Baptist South, poverty is something, it's a sign that you did something wrong.
Yeah, white trash.
Yeah. There's something wrong with you. You was wrong from birth. There's a reason you're poor. And that's how people treat you.
Is that part biblical, do you think?
I think it's just sheer damn foolishness. And it's ancient prejudice.
And what side of the tracks you live on?
Yeah. Well, we always lived on the other side of the tracks, next to the ice house, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we lived in Greer for a short while, it was so plain it was frightening. You cross the railroad tracks and the houses dropped by a story. Yeah. It was very impressive.
What is it you think that you may not be the person to ask this, but you're dealing with such powerful themes here. Mm-hmm. Poverty, survival,
family,
violence against women.
And children.
Mm-hmm. What is fascinating for me is that, this is, while we look at you and we see this woman who survived herself and who got mean, who also lived in New York and who also learned to write and who always wanted to write.
And who mostly enjoys her life.
And who mostly enjoys her life. And who has a new baby.
Yes.
That is the joy of her life beyond everything.
How'd you know?
Because I watch CBS Sunday Morning, and there's this really wonderful piece in which you are holding this silly baby all the time, saying, "Isn't this the most beautiful, the most handsome, the most extraordinary, whatever?"
I know. I'm so classic. I carry pictures and everything. It's terrible.
When did you come out and announce you were a lesbian?
Oh, Lord. I didn't have to. Everybody knew. They told me.
Who told you?
My mother told me. Well, what she told me when I was about 16, I tried to have this talk with her because I got scared.
Scared of what?
Scared I was going to die.
Because?
Because every lesbian that I had ever read about or heard about died. You know, that's what the movies tell you. It's what the literature tells you. And it's what the people around you tell you. And the very few lesbians that I had ever seen were either dead or dying, drinking themselves to death.
Out of
what? What it makes people hate themselves?
I don't know.
Everything. Not being loved enough, not letting the other people love them enough. My mother basically said she knew that it was going to be hard and that she worried about me and that she never wanted me not to be able to talk to her. But we didn't use the word lesbian, not until I became a lesbian feminist, and I came home and we used the big words, and that was kind of funny. I came home to say, Mama, I've been photographed. I might be in the newspapers. You need to get ready. And she was like, we better talk to your sisters.
Yeah. And did you talk to your sisters?
Oh, yes. They were horrified.
Why? Because
they were going through their brief fundamentalist period.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it was brief.
Which means that you were, because of homosexuality, you were sinful.
Well, they knew I was sinful. We grew up together. We were all sinful. But I was, past the pale. I was an endangerment to society. That was interesting. Yeah. Gives you a lot of power.
How so does it give you power?
You're an endangerment to society just because you ain't doing what everybody else does. That's large for a child. It's large for a teenager. It's damn scary for a young woman.
Yeah. You had a child. You're 43.
Yes.
Yeah. And this baby was born when?
He was born August 28th.
How
I
long
did not birth him. My lover birthed him.
How long had you wanted a child?
Oh, now that's part of being mean. I can't have children, so I never let myself want children. I didn't. When I would think about it, I would just cut it off really hard, and I limited my being around children because I was so angry at not being able to have them. And when my lover told me that she wanted to have a child, my first response was I was mad at her because she could, and because
you couldn't.
Yeah, because it was nothing. It was simple for her. It was not even a large question. The question for her was, what did I think, and was it possible for us to do this together? It took me a long time to make peace with it, to get past being angry and jealous, and to decide that, in fact, I could do it. And there's the other part. I grew up in a really violent family, and both my sisters and I always worried that we'd repeat it. One of the things that the book is about is how that casual violence against children gets to be normal. You get used to the idea that if a kid lets off, you backhand him. You get used to the idea that children are hard and sturdy and can get thrown around. Growing up and making myself realize that none of that was true and that I had to change it was hard.
Yeah. There's a scene which you have read before in public, about going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Tell it to me.
Oh, no. The reason I'm a writer is because when you make that kind of a scene, it's crafted. It's very, very careful. I worked a long time to make it work. I had to tell you first how Bone got used to being injured, how she got used to having all these nicknames about bones, about knuckle bone, neck bone, head bone, knees, and how the calluses and bruises and broken bones became normal to her. And then take her to a hospital where there's a doctor that it's not normal to.
Not normal.
And he's mad at her mother, who is not the person who's beating her. And you have the mother and daughter caught there, both of them trying to protect each other, and both of them in great pain. And of course, the person who is responsible is not there. He's outside in the parking lot.
Stepfather is outside in the parking lot.
Yeah. And then, of course, it becomes a scene in which Bone does what she always does. She tells herself a story to hope for justice.
Why 10 years to do this?
I had to get good enough. What I wanted to do was bigger.
Craftsman,
And also I had to get past some rage.
What was the rage?
I had to get past the bitterness against my stepfather and against my mother. Until I was
Was she covered?
Yeah.
How do you get rid of the bitterness?
Well, you grow up enough to know that women don't do what they want to do. They do what they have to do sometimes. And that they lose themselves sometimes because they're not told they can do something different. My mother believed in family. She thought that making a good family would save her daughters. She had grown up poor. My grandmother ran my grandfather off. Yes. She didn't want that to happen. She wanted her girls to be better, to have better. And she really believed that no matter what was going on, that was better. So she hung on. She made it safer, but she never stopped it.
We'll show the picture. Tell me about the picture.
Oh, the little girl.
Yeah.
It's a photograph by Dorothy Allison. It's called Girl and Her Mother, 1939, and it's one I absolutely love. The original cover for the book that Dutton had commissioned a painting of a pickup truck and a porch. I called it Steven Spielberg Does Tobacco Road. And they were, well, you know, show us what you really want. And I found that picture and sent it to them and said, I love the little girl's face. Give me something like the little girl's face. And they said, we'll give you the whole picture. You
said, I'm 43 years old. If I was still bitter, I'd be dead. Mm-hmm. One of the things I worked hard on in the book was to show that it is not entirely hellish. In the midst of great poverty and great violence, there's also enormous love and caring.
Yes. Where did you find love and caring? If you've read the book, then you know about the greater family. Bone is surrounded by...
I do know, but I...
He has the aunts and uncles. And I very deliberately based most of the aunts and uncles on my aunts and uncles, who I remember from my childhood, who were really dirt-poor, desperate people who loved each other absolutely, and in a way that it didn't seem to have carried down to later generations. I was in awe of the way they took care of each other, and they were each other's primary audience and passionate about each other. And they, in turn, become Bone's role models, the people who save her. They're the people that Annie sends her to when things get bad at home. They're the people that she looks to understand love. And they're storytellers. They're constantly telling her about her great-granddaddy and her Cherokee granddaddy and her great-grandmama, giving her the idea that life doesn't have to be the way it is right now.
I'm talking about craft and about the messages and the lessons of this. You said you didn't, it took you 10 years because you had to get good enough. Good enough in terms of writing, in terms of constructing a sentence, in terms of what?
Well, two things. One, in terms of writing. Yeah. Because it's real dangerous material to write about a violent family and a woman who fails. And the relationship between a girl and a mother doesn't work, doesn't save the child. It's real dangerous because if you do it too simply, it's too easy. People will blame mama, or there's just this simple villain. You know, the stepfather is the villain. But that's not what I wanted to write. That's not the central interest for me. The central interest for me was that relationship between Annie and Bone.
Why fiction rather than nonfiction?
Because I ain't that good at nonfiction.
I thought you would say, that's not what I thought you'd say.
What do you think I'd say?
I thought you'd say fiction, you can make the ending you want.
No,
in fiction.
You can't.
You can stretch it in fiction. You can have more freedom and maybe even tell a deeper truth in fiction, or some variation of that.
You can tell a deeper truth in fiction, but you can't always tell the ending you want. I like happy endings, but fiction for me, good fiction, is about telling a story that is absolutely true to what you know about the world.
From your life, what's the hope? In other words, someone watches you tonight, and let's assume that tomorrow night is a glorious night for you.
I don't much care about that. What I want...
You don't much care about that?
Well, no, not really.
Because this is here, and they can never take this from you. And
this is a good book.
Yeah.
When I got the book and read through it, it worked. And that's... All this other stuff, I don't actually believe in competition. I believe in good writing.
Yeah.
And I read Garcia's book, Dreaming in Cuban, and I was knocked out. I've been reading Lost in the City. These are good books. This is good company. It doesn't matter what they do with this. No, this is... The novel works. It does what I wanted it to do. I want what I really want. Yeah. I want somewhere some 13-year-old girl to go to the library and find this book and read it and know Bone and know that what's happening to her in her life is not her fault, that she does not have to think she's a monster. Because the way I made Bone is to show you young girls who think they're monsters, who think it's their fault. I show you a little girl getting mean enough to survive. That's what I want to teach. That's what I wanted in this book.
And that's you?
Yeah, to make way. And then again, there's also, I wanted to show a working class family. Trash that's not what everybody thinks they are.
Dorothy Allison, bastard out of Carolina. I know these people, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. When we come back, Stacy Keach is here. Solitary confinement. Back in a moment.